This episode is brought to you by Sutra Beauty. Hi, Gene. How are you?
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining my podcast. Everyone, of course, knows Gene Simmons. We don't need an introduction. He's a legendary rock musician from the band Kiss, and I met him at Artists for Israel, and it was an amazing event. And we just got to talking, and I was really surprised because I found out that this guy is not only a musician, but he was also a teacher, and he had so much information, and it was lovely talking to you.
Well, you're very kind. I feel much better about myself.
So, first, like, I wanted to ask you, why did you want to become a teacher? What got you into that?
I will tell you, my mother and I came to America when I was about 8 years old.
Hmm.
My mother was a concentration camp survivor of Nazi Germany, World War II. Our whole family was wiped out.
Wow.
And then she went to the new country of Israel, and I was born there. And then we came to America when I was 8. Life was hard there. And so when I started to go to college, I wanted to make sure both my roommates were African American
Hmm.
to confront, any kind of subconscious racist tendencies, which people may have, even though it's not physical or even verbal.
Hmm.
People tend to be clannish. People tend to live with their own kind. So I wanted to make sure that was, and my mother, of course, was scared because she saw all the hatred and everything, and she was complaining, can't you find your own kind of a thing. I said, no, Mom, I've got to, the world is a big place and everybody doesn't look the same or sound the same or worship the same God or any of that stuff. And I want to find out who I really am and all that. So when I went to college in the State University of New York, I didn't actually know what I was trying to get at, but while I was living with, we dormed together, my two African American roommates, you learn a lot. You learn a lot, not just from books, but from people. That's the best part of it. When you live together and you find about culture and language and music and, what people are really about, not just what they look or sound like.
Hmm.
And that's when I got serious about wanting to be a teacher, especially in deprived areas. In America, deprived areas are either Hispanic or Black,
Yeah.
African American, because they're poor
Hmm.
predominantly. And so I wanted to give back. America gave us so much, the ability to put food on the table, have a roof over our heads, and all that. And generally speaking, nobody was trying to kill you just because, I don't know, you were Jewish or Arab or Black or Hispanic or anything. I mean, there's always hatred someplace, but it wasn't like Nazi Germany.
Hmm.
So I wanted to elevate, try to improve the lives. I know it sounds very kind of romantic, idealized, but
That sounds
uh,
amazing. Like, and that's what people, this is what I do, what a lot of people are doing right now. We need it now more than ever. So I
that's
understand
right.
where you come from.
And so I started, you're right. And so I started teaching sixth grade in Spanish Harlem, got my Bachelor of Arts in Education. But within 6 months, this band that I was in called Kiss that was rehearsing, and we got a record contract. And within a year and a half of coming out, we were headlining Anaheim Stadium in California. I mean, it happened. It
Hmm.
happened very, very fast. A few words about anti-Semitism right now, which is on the rise. I want to make sure people don't misunderstand why I'm actively trying to speak up. I am against all forms of hatred. If your people, your religion, your skin color is being picked on,
Hmm.
and if the person next door to you doesn't speak up, the one who doesn't look or sound like you doesn't speak up, they're next. Nobody is safe from hatred.
Hmm.
And And as far as I'm concerned, anti-Semitism is exactly the same as racism, Islamophobia. Anybody who hates anybody just because they're different is the problem with the world.
Mm-hmm.
I can personally not like you, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't like you or speak up about you because you speak differently, come from another country, or worship a different God,
Yeah.
or look different, that's the real problem with the planet. One day when aliens land on Earth, they won't understand what all the hatred is between human beings because they just look at us as bipeds. They just look at us and say, oh, they're earthlings. They're all the same.
Mm-hmm. So you actually
Yes.
made a really good point that it's true. Every religion, they have their own wars and all of that. And I'm secular Muslim, and I respect the people who are religious and the people who are not non-religious. But now I hear this a lot that, oh, religion is the reason for like war and people killing each other. And I don't believe that's the reason. I think even if we didn't have any religion, we would still have people trying to get to power by creating hate among a group of people. So what are your thoughts on that to the people who think, oh, we shouldn't have any religion
Well,
because
it's nobody's business what you believe in and what you want to, if you want religion or if you're an atheist, it's nobody else's business. That's your own private thing.
Mhm.
Basically, everybody should stay out of everybody else's business. And respect is an important word. So the best thing an atheist can do, somebody who doesn't believe in God, is to respect the
Mhm.
person who does believe in God in whatever shape or form they believe in.
Yeah.
And the person who does believe in God should respect the idea, oh, that person doesn't think or believe the way I do, but they're allowed to breathe the same air and walk the same land. The young people don't know hatred, they
Mhm.
learn hatred.
That's
When you
true.
when you have little babies that run into each other, they don't know what language they speak. They're just babies, and they learn hatred from their mothers, their fathers, and the midrasas and politics.
But it's
You
actually, you know what, the majority of our learning, like I grew up in Iraq, it comes from the government, and the government they put it in mosques, they put it in schools.
For
Just to,
anybody who wants to find out about Islam,
Mhm.
you should read the Quran. It is a book of peace,
Mhm.
and whenever it talks about war, it's defensive, not offensive. I
Mhm.
studied the Quran. I read it in school, and it's a beautiful book. And mostly so is the what's called the five books of Moses or the Bible. They do teach you similar ideas. Be kind to each other when there's a guest who comes by.
Mhm.
The Ten Commandments actually does not say do not kill. In
Mhm.
Hebrew, it's do not murder. You're allowed to kill if you're a soldier or a policeman or something, of
Yeah.
course, if there's a bad person, but you shouldn't do it for personal reasons like murder.
Mhm.
At any rate, the best thing that can happen is if younger generations just talk to each other. They find things that they agree on.
Mhm. You've been like, I've been reading about you. You've been a staunch supporter for Israel.
That's not a fair
And
statement. It doesn't tell the whole story, but let me put it out there. I am completely for a free, independent Palestinian country right alongside Israel. You
Mhm.
have to learn to coexist. We all come from the same bloodline. The languages are very similar. At
Mhm.
one point, we all spoke Aramaic. I will say the following.
Mhm.
In the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament, there are Arab Israelis who
Mhm.
are voted in and
Mhm.
don't agree. They're Muslim. They don't agree with the rest of the Jewish Israelis. They argue with them, but they get voted in. It's called democracy. There are Arab Israelis who refuse to leave Israel to go and live in other countries because they enjoy so much more freedom
Mhm.
in Israel. Yes, there's racism and there's problems in politics,
Just like
but
every
you
country.
but you're safer being a Shia or a Sunni or
Mhm.
even a Wahhabist and living in Israel because nobody will try to hunt you down.
Yeah.
On one side of the wall in Israel, you can have a mosque right next to a Jewish temple, right next to a Christian church, and everybody goes and worships their own way. Lots of Christians walk the walk that they think Jesus did, but as soon as you go to the other side, try to find a Jewish temple anywhere in Arab lands. My goodness, as long as you've got democracy
Mhm.
and as long as religion, any religion, does not have the power to pass laws, religion should be a personal choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's my point. Now, of course, that doesn't work in some countries where religious law is the law of the land.
Hmm.
You can't be a woman or a child or walk down the street dressed the way you want to dress.
Hmm.
But in Israel, you can, even if you're Muslim.
Hmm. You know, also like one of the things you mentioned earlier, the Palestinians who live in Israel, they have more rights, or they feel more safety in Israel than, in the West Bank. And also like another issue that seems to be going on the other side is if you work inside Israel, you actually make way more money than if you work in the West
Of
Bank.
course,
In the West
of
Bank,
course,
they don't.
because it's called capitalism.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
capitalism works. I just want to say this, so hopefully somebody can put this up in lights. I love, respect, and admire Arab culture. I love, respect, and admire Muslims,
Mhm.
good Muslims, peace loving Muslims. And likewise, I think pretty well of Jews. I think, okay, good Israeli Jews are good.
No, it's so simple when we talk about it, but most people, they don't see it that way. For example, when people ask me about the conflict, and from my conversations, like with the Arabs and with the Jews, it literally all come down to this is a holy land, and we're supposed like to be in control of it because it's holy. And it's so sad
Well,
because,
it's holy, but it's holy to many religions. It's
exactly.
holy to Christians, Islam,
And
and
it was
Jews.
holy to Jewish people before it was holy to Muslims.
It's interesting that whether it's in England or America, you can have people from different parts of the world who don't get along over there. But over here, in free societies, you can argue. You
Mhm.
don't have to pick up guns and be violent. You can just argue. Arguing is good. Just use your mouth instead of your fists and your gun. The future is always looking brighter
Mhm.
when young people have access to free information and different ways of thinking
Mhm.
just to hear it. Facebook is important. Even Twitter just plays people with different cultures showing what life is like and how people think in other places. Young people will have much more open minds and hearts. I really believe the world is going to be a much better place when a generation of young people become the leaders of the world.
Mhm.
Old people are stuck in their ways, and once they die off, it's going to be a new world, a
Mhm.
better world.
Let's hope. Let's hope that,
Oh,
because
look at
I
you.
am honestly, I'm kind of worried because I feel like a lot of the young people don't actually put any effort into learning about our history and about like geopolitics, and they try to push like American thought into the Middle East. But let me tell you something, like American democracy did not work in the Middle East because the majority of the people in the Middle East, we are motivated by Islam and our laws. And this is why we have issues like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, like where the women, they get oppressed. So if we had democracy in the Middle East, the majority that's going to vote in, it's going to be very conservative Muslims, and then many people will lose rights. So when I have the conversation with Americans here, like that's kind of sad. Like I feel like they don't get it. You really have to live in the Middle East, like to understand how things work.
That's a good
So
idea. That's a good idea.
what
It's the
happened to
only.
Iraq? Like we were so happy Like when the US came in and they removed Saddam, people were dancing in the streets, and we thought we literally gonna turn into a country, and we should have turned into a country like, the Emirates, because we got all the oil and the natural resources, but instead Iraq became a vacuum for power for all these Islamists coming from Iran and coming from like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and we
But
had
basic,
support.
yeah, right, and
You know?
Chechnya and all the rest. But basically, the power struggle was religious, Sunni versus Shia. Iran, which is not an Arab country,
Mhm,
uh, supporting the Shia personnel, Mr. Sadr,
mhm,
SADR, and so on. I know the players. I understand it. It's not, the problems are not going to be solved overnight. The future looks bright. Young people are going to be thinking more clearly. Look,
mhm,
when the Arab Spring started in Egypt, especially, and Mr. Mubarak
mhm,
was put on the sidelines and so on. And I know the Muslim Brotherhood came on for a while. Then uh, Al Sisi came in, but on the streets
mhm,
when the Arab Spring was happening, CNN was there and they were interviewing people on the street who were
mhm,
celebrating the Arab Spring.
mhm.
And there was the interviewer was asking a person, "Do you speak English? Do you speak English?" And one proud Egyptian came up, and he was speaking in Egyptian Arabic because that's a different accent, as you know, than the Iraq. And then he broke into English and said, "We are happy. We are happy. This is fantastic and everything." And then the CNN reporter said, "Would you like to say anything to anybody, how you feel or any message?"
Mhm.
And the proud Egyptian said he would like to thank Mr. Zuckerberg for giving them Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So here is a proud
Mhm,
Egyptian Muslim
mhm.
who's thanking an American Jew for giving them the ability to communicate with each
I did
other
not think
without
about
the
that one.
government. You see,
Mhm,
that's the magic. Zuckerberg didn't try to change his mind. He just gave people the freedom to
mhm,
express their opinions in any way they wanted to express them. And that was the power of Facebook. It stopped the military for saying this is the way it is and that's the way it is. So people started thinking for themselves. And whatever was going on the streets
mhm.
in Iran, which is the right way to say it, with the sad thing that happened and young people demonstrating on the street, nobody from another country came and did that. The people
Yeah.
started listening to different points of views from Facebook and so on. And look, they live in the countries too, and they have a right to determine their future.
Yeah.
But of course, I can't even comment on it because I'm not in those countries and I'm not part of the culture or the religion.
Mhm,
All I'm saying is that as soon as you try to stop the free flow of ideas, you're going to have a problem. Like water that stands still will become rotten. The healthiest water is water that runs in every direction, like a river.
mhm. The only problem is what's going on in Iran or Iraq. By the way, Iraq right now, what we have, people don't even pay attention to Iraq anymore. But we literally had the same protests that happened in Iran. We had them in 2019. It was called the October Revolution, and they were killing protesters with live bullets. I have many friends who are Iraqi activists. Now they live in exile. They can't go back to Iraq because the government wants them dead, just like they want me dead. And just like, they created this they added these new laws they're adapting in the Iraqi constitution. For example, to any Iraqi who has relation with Israel, they would have a death sentence. They would be executed. So if I go to Iraq, I'm to be executed. And it's right now the Iraqi prime minister that we have sitting in Iraq is part of the Hizb Dawah Islamic Party. And this party are the same party that helped Khomeini to power in Iran back in like 1979. So
That's Shia, basically.
it's Shia, but it's not just Shia. So here's the thing, like what's happened in Iraq, what a lot of people don't realize, there's so many Shias are against the Iran-backed Shias. We have like two different Shias right now.
But
And
I understand, but you're basically
yeah,
talking about young people.
yeah.
The clash of ideas is nothing new in religion and politics everywhere. Young people will always think of a brighter, newer way of looking at life. And that's why I really believe Iran is going to be a fantastic country with new, bright minds. I firmly believe in young Muslims and
Mhm.
young Jews and young Christians. They're going to make this world a better place. And by the way, when you're in Haifa, where I was born, it's not just Christians and Jews and Muslims. You can go to the main temple of the Baha'i faith. Most
Mhm.
people don't even know about that. That's right there. It's a beautiful, it's got gardens and things, and people who believe in the Baha'i faith go to Haifa. It's a
Mhm.
place where, and of course, there were
Yeah.
10,000 rockets that fell on that little city, but that's another story.
Yeah.
The future is going to be great because young people are going to come in and the old people are finally going to shut up and get out of the way.
I feel like with what's going on in Iran, with what's going on in Iraq, the problem is we don't have support and we really can't take out the government because this is a brutal government. You've seen what's going on in Iran, even with all the protests, how many women, were being raped, were being killed. And this has been going
But
on for years now. And no
it's
one is,
true, and
so how can we
it'll
build a
get it'll
system
get
without
better. But if you
external help?
don't you
That's a
don't
question.
don't you feel great being here in America where you can just talk right over a guy and not be afraid?
Oh, I'll talk over you, Gene,
Of
anytime.
course, of course. But listen,
Yes.
in the era of Saddam, if you tried anything, you wouldn't be around. You would disappear.
Mhm.
So change is tough. I understand. When new ideas happen, the old religious guys get very upset, and the old political guys get very upset. But soon they will all die out
Yeah.
because everybody will get old and everybody will die. So the world,
Well, they put their children in charge. That's the issue. This is what's going on with Iran.
but the
Like
children,
they're
the
saying gang.
children, the children of Hitler are not Hitler because
No,
there's
but
new
it's a gang.
information.
It's a gang and it's a system. We're talking about Islamic regime. So the reason why I emphasize on this, and I love your words and I love your support to Iran, but I feel like um nothing actually is going to change if we don't have the US and the world support to Iran. Like just talking about it is actually not going to change anything. We need to see actual action or policies, like not trying to appease the Iranian regime, not trying to sign a nuclear deal with them, trying every way to cut any air to the Iranian regime so that they can starve themselves out, and then they would have to make these changes just to appease us. But by these changes, they're serving their people. Their people are not rioting because they support the United States. They're rioting because they live in desperate poverty, because they cannot even afford to, like if they eat breakfast they can't eat dinner. Their life condition is horrible, and this is why they're protesting. But I feel like sadly, like what's happening in Iran, what's happened in Iraq, I just wish that we could get the same level of support like the people of Ukraine, and we don't have that. That's the only difference.
The world is a messy place. Mr. Putin is busy doing what he's doing. Mr. Zelensky is trying to keep his country alive. And I remember Mr. Putin kept talking about how the Ukrainians were Nazis, but of course he forgot to find out that Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, his whole family was killed.
Mm-hmm.
He himself is Jewish, so Mr. Putin forgot that point.
Mm-hmm.
But the main point is that the world is messy. There are problems all over the world. It's true. But I'm going to go back to what I said before, which is the only hope of the world is young people. Young people who have Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
now called Meta, and the free flow of ideas that you don't hear at home or in the madrasa or in churches or synagogues. Other people's ideas so that young people can have a broad mind.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be fast and it's going to take time, but things will change. I promise you that.
I hope so. I hope so.
Of
I
course.
really hope so. Like, for me, just because, I grew up in Iraq and there was no way that we could have get rid of Saddam. It only happened because the US came in. And, I feel like maybe Iran like needs support, more support from the US. I hope that it will happen. I hope that, they will not do the nuclear deal and all of that. Um,
That's you speaking about things that other people might have big problems with, but
mhm,
that's another story. I'm just talking generally about life on planet Earth. I am very hopeful and very positive about the future looking bright. And that's because the old people are not going to be around too much longer. Young people will change it from inside,
mhm,
from inside. And it's going to be fine. It really is, but it's going to be messy. It's going to be violent for a while, but that's
yeah.
human beings. Human beings are violent. Any culture, any religion,
Mhm.
any country, we all have violent, shameful pasts.
Yeah, that's true.
Slavery and things that you can't point to a country that didn't have slavery and racism and all that. It's true, but it's getting better. Once upon a time, there was no such thing as democracy. There were only kings and queens,
That's true.
right, and dictators.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the Gutenberg Bible, there was actually a printing press that
Hmm.
was invented, and the first book was the Bible. That
Hmm.
was the first book that was printed, and people slowly learned how to read. And then, once they learned how to read, all the books that you're not allowed, that the churches didn't want you to read,
Hmm.
people started writing different thoughts, different ideas. And then people slowly started to learn to read and get new ideas into their minds. And that's how the world slowly changes. When
Hmm.
you're allowed to think for yourself and live your life your way without somebody telling you how to think and live.
Yeah.
That's the only future of the world.
I hope that this will happen soon in the Middle East because you have no idea how it affects me when I see the news and what's going on. And I know the
It
struggle.
takes it
Yeah.
takes a long time
Mhm.
because you may not realize it, but there isn't a single Arab country that has ever had democracy in the entire history of Earth.
That's true.
It has never existed. So
Yeah.
you're talking about a new way of thinking that they've never even imagined. It's going to take time.
Well, now I wanted to ask you this since you're a musician, not many musicians feel comfortable talking about politics and all of that, but I really respect and admire this in you that you are not afraid to talk about any of these issues. What do you tell young artists who have huge audience and who can influence people? Um, do you recommend that they get involved in such things and
I
talk?
I recommend that everybody
Mhm.
turn down the heat and
Mhm.
try a little kindness, because it's easy to say I'm for this and I'm against that.
Mhm.
And there are people who don't agree with you whose feelings or religion is
Mhm.
going to be hurt if you say certain things. So I urge anybody who wants to speak up to just be kind. I'm going to say it again. I love Arabs.
Mhm.
I wish and hope that there's a Palestinian state country now, right now, a peaceful one, so everybody can trade with each other, exchange ideas.
Mhm.
And you have to remember, not too long ago, Germans were killing everybody,
Mhm.
Russians too, during World War II. Uh, Something like 50 million people were killed,
Yeah.
soldiers, concentration camps, and everything.
Yeah.
And the enemies were Japan and Germany, and in the beginning, Italy. Now they're our closest friends. And
Mhm.
the only thing that changes that is young people become the new leaders of the world and people change.
Yeah. It's been this, it's
Not,
like 75 years of war, and it's just sad. Like people, they need to accept each other. You need to accept a Jewish state. You need to accept a Palestinian state. Find a common ground
or
and
accepting the
try.
Jewish state. How about Shia starts to accept Sunni? That would be a great thing.
You know,
Start
we have
a,
more,
a
I think we have a little bit more acceptance than, between Islam and Judaism, because we still coexist in Iraq. Yeah, we have our issues, but we still, Shia and Sunnis, they still live together. There's still some level of respect and some level of acceptance.
that's terrific.
So this is what
That's
we need happening, like in Israel and in Palestine. We need people to finally accept each other. You have like two people, well, especially, like with the Palestinian resistance, what I don't like when
you're
they try
you're
to.
going to get into a lot of trouble, but I admire it.
No, no, listen, I talk about this all the time. This is my job. I'm an activist. I got death threats because, I said, let's make peace with Israel. But when I talk with a lot of the Palestinian resistance, what I don't like hearing is that literally they say there is no state of Israel. It's a Zionist entity, and they cannot.
But that's
A
okay.
country.
That's okay for somebody to have that opinion. That's okay, as
No,
long as
not
you don't
okay, because
resort.
they seek to eradicate it. They say
But
this should be eradicated. There shouldn't be. It's called only Palestine. There is no country called Israel. How do you talk with such people?
well, the sons and daughters of
Mhm.
future generations. I keep going back to that.
Mm.
Don't you argue with your mother and father all the time?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Of course you do. Everybody's children argues with their mothers and fathers. They don't agree with a lot of the things that mothers and fathers do. Yeah. And not too long ago in America, you would never hear about a white person marrying a black person. And
Mm.
then young people said, why not? And
Yeah.
we started to have mixed race kids because people loved each other and they didn't look at the skin tone. And it's impossible to have a Jew and a Muslim marry, but it is possible. If you go to Israel, there are Muslim and Jewish households where
Mhm.
the kids can practice any religion, whatever they want.
Mhm.
And she is a proud Muslim and he's a proud Jew, and neither tries to force the other one into believing the thing.
Yeah.
Religion is private. It's nobody's business
No, of course.
who
Yeah.
who you worship.
Yeah, no, it's just, that like I know you probably don't want to get into this. You're like, oh, you're gonna get in trouble, but I'm already in trouble, Gene. You need to understand.
but
I've been in trouble for years now. And I'm not shy. I will talk about it. And it's like it scares me,
I
but
sit. But
yeah, yeah.
I recommend whatever you say. You
Hmm.
keep reminding people that you're a proud Muslim,
Hmm.
that you're proud Iraqi, and you love and respect the culture because that's true.
Hmm.
And that
I
whatever you're
represented Iraq. Of course, I'm proud
but
Iraq.
wait but wait that whatever you're saying is because you want to make life better,
Hmm.
your country, your religion, your culture. So if you approach it from a positive way, it's not an insult
Hmm.
to people who believe different ways.
Hmm. No, I never try to insult. That's not my approach. But what I'm trying to tell you is, as an activist dealing with the other side, I see some scary things that are happening. Like I was at UCLA not too long ago where they held the Students for Justice for Palestine. And the ideas that they're pushing on students that are not just Palestinians, but Americans and like in other from other minority groups, they're trying to tell them that Israel is an apartheid state. It's a white European colony, and they are murdering brown Arab people, which is a lie. Because if you like, this, you grew up in Israel, that in Israel, Arabs and Jews have the same rights, that many Arabs are not
Well,
only
my
descent,
when I was
they're
growing up, my
ambassadors. Mhm.
my best friend when I was growing up was Jeannette, who was a Moroccan Muslim girl
Mhm.
who was, darker than brown. She was African,
Mhm.
and we didn't even think about it. We did not talk about religion. We didn't talk about Jews and Muslims. We were just best friends. We were children.
Yeah.
We didn't know about anything. We only saw each other as friends.
Hmm.
The children, in one of the holy books, it says, and a child shall lead them. It's only through innocent new eyes
Hmm.
are we going to see a better world. It's going to be fine.
Okay.
I've never had an interview like this in my life.
Thank you so much, Gene, for taking the time. Hopefully, I hope that you keep speaking out about bringing all these faiths together and about, trying to find common ground between the people of all cultures and of all religions. That's the only way we can push humanity forward.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much.